sabotage ourselves.
And the text is, God's wisdom is proved right by all who are her children. The Zen master was visiting New York City, and he goes up to a hot dog vendor and says, "Make me one with everything." The hot dog vendor fixes a hot dog and hands it to the Zen master, who pays with a $20 bill. The vendor puts the bill in a cash box and closes it. "Excuse me, but where's my change?" asks the Zen master. "Oh, my brother," says the vendor, "change comes from within." You ever seen the movie starring Kevin Costner called Tin Cup? It's about a legendary golf pro who's got a fatal flaw. He was someone who could easily win the American Open, except for one thing. At some point in the game, he's likely to snap and go for a very difficult shot when wisdom would counsel caution. His friends all knew him well and would wait for it to happen. So he enters the American Open and qualifies. But every time he gets to a hole with a water trap in front of it, instead of using a safe layup shot, he goes for the green. In the last round, he's confronted by the same hole and once again pulls out the distance wedge instead of the 7-iron and the ball goes straight into the water. At this point, he could still win. But what does he do? He tries the shot again and again. Now he's lost the American Open and is starting to look like a real fool. Finally, 11 shots down, he has one last golf ball in his bag. And if he loses this shot, he's just disqualified. So he winds up, hits a perfect shot over the water, onto the green, into the hole. So ends the movie, leaving the it problem unsolved. I want to ask today, why is it that so many of us pull a tin cup with our lives? Just when we're winning hands down, suddenly we choke. It's the end of the ball game. The great T.E. Lawrence of Arabia fame used to say that just when he was actually something that he'd strive for was within his reach, when he could actually put out his hand and take it, held back, he didn't want it anymore. Have you been watching Donald Trump in front of the judge? The judge is in charge of sentencing him. What does Trump do? He insults the judge and the judge's staff. He can't help himself. He does this sort of thing all the time. He's no wisdom. The latest judgment because of this flaw is $83 million. Judy Garland said that she had done everything to excess. The biographer wrote something about Judy. Quotes, "Below her yawned the snake pit. Ambulances to the hospital, stomach pumps, blackmail, throat slashed with broken glass, stage fright, shouting matches in public, pills by the handful, a bad drunk, promiscuous sex, sequestered salary, turned out onto the street, bleak despair, and paralyzing terror." Did you know that about Judy Garland, the famous star of stage and screen? During the White House Clinton years, I one day happened to turn on the news. There was a particular senator on attack against them. The White House staff were actually happy because he was attacking them. Why? Because they felt it was only a matter of time until the senator would say something that would undermine his credibility. So, fascinated, for 2 weeks I watched to see if this senator would screw up. Sure enough, right on cue, he opened his mouth and lost all credibility. You see, his flaw had become predictable. Is that us today? Do people know us so well that we become predictable? In fact, They predict that we're going to blow off steam, and sure enough, on cue, that's precisely what we do. Why don't we get it? Why do we shoot ourselves in the foot all the time? Why don't we learn from our past mistakes? And just in case you think that St. Paul was immune to this phenomenon, let me quote him on his tin cup. Here it is. I don't even acknowledge my own actions as mine, for what I do is not what I want to do, but what I detest. The good, which I want to do, I fail to do. I discover this principle then, that when I want to do the right, only the wrong is within my reach. Miserable creature that I am, who is there to rescue me? The great Blaise Pascal was an astute observer of human nature. Pascal thought that we take risks because we're bored. And that's why Tin Cup threw away the American Open. You see, life would be so much more exciting if you did the impossible. Pascal says we do that just so we can boast tomorrow to our friends that we played better than someone else. Ever seen someone with a big fish talk about it? That's the same reason scholars sweat to solve hitherto unsolvable problems in algebra. That's why we risk incredible danger. Some people observe this quality in themselves not to become wiser, but just to show that they know about it. And according to Pascal, these are the biggest fools of the lot because they know what they're doing, when they're doing it, and they do it anyway. Well, another person, if they knew about it, would stop. Do you know anybody who is aware of their behavior pattern, who spectates themselves while they do it again? I do. And I wonder just what kind of inner chaos is going on in those people's minds. Often they're brilliant. Often they're aware of their tragic flaw, but they hold on to that flaw against all comers. They're unreachable. What's going on here? You know, in our society, some of us make ourselves so incredibly busy that we don't have time to think. We divert ourselves with our busy flaw. I know a woman who works all the time. She's honest. She tells me she doesn't want to have time to think. And when she does have time to think, she gets miserable and afraid. So workaholism is her chosen flaw. Have you ever asked yourself why the chase is more important than the prize? What do you do with a prize after you've got it? We're suddenly back to ourselves, aren't we? It's easier to deal, I believe, with a tragic death, a lost job, a failed marriage, or a cancer diagnosis and begin those journeys than to pause and reflect on our own lives. It's the danger and the excitement that keep us going. We subscribe to the notion, it's not the destination, it's the journey. We don't really want to arrive and have to confront our own self again. Well, what's the root of all of this kind of behavior? Why do we work all the time? Why was Judy Garland so externally successful, but her private life such a failure? I want to ask you a question today which I think goes to the heart. I want to ask you, is God external to you, out there, big enough to create the universe, and definitely outside of you? What does the Christian faith say about that? Well, it agrees that God is external to us, but there's a parallel truth. Helen Keller, both blind and deaf, was not cut off from God. She became aware of God within her. She said, I believe that God is in me as the sun is in the color and fragrance of a flower, the light in my darkness, the voice in my silence. Albert Schweitzer once said, the nature of the being outside of me I can understand only through the living being which is within me. And the Bible teaches us that the Holy Spirit may be invited inside us to live with us. And the greatest verse for this is in the entrance of Knox over there in the stained glass. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I'll come in and dwell with them. What's the tin cup's problem? He doesn't have wisdom. Something comes over him and his good judgment is suddenly lost. He doesn't pause to go inward where God is. Only after does he ask, why did I do that? Too late. Let me hazard a guess this morning. If you're tin cupping your life, the chances are better than excellent that you're not taking the time to go inward where God is. Jesus took the time to do this often. He withdrew to meditate, to be alone with God, to pray, and to reflect. He went inward to find God and get the guidance he needed. You know, I often say that we can all claim to be divinely guided and protected. How do we do this? We go inward to where God is and ask for help. You know, Jesus experienced tin cup temptations for power and influence, for recognition, for fame and the stuff of legend in his famous bout with the Dark One in the desert. But he didn't give in. In the desert, he experienced the text, "Be still and know that I am God." He listened to the still, small voice of wisdom within him, cultivated his hearing of it. Do you give yourselves time to listen to that still, small voice of God within? It's going to take discipline, setting aside time to do this. Some people do it by their bedside. For others, it's in the shower, or the pool, or on a walk early in the morning when they're open to God. If we don't do this, we're going to have to learn the hard way. You know, many people I know are actually dying inside. They don't care for themselves, physically, psychologically, emotionally, or spiritually. They don't love themselves at all. In fact, their lives are just full of stress. They have no peace. They know that they're tin cupping their lives. They're like plants in a workplace without sunlight, stuck in a pot without water, in an airless office. Is that you today? Beverly Sills, the famous opera star, described one such plant. In New York, she had no time for anything, and someone gave her a plant. It was placed on a stand in her office. Within a week, it had died. That bothered Beverly. But one of its leaves was still green, so she clipped it off and planted it. She watered it every day, and she set it under a lamp at night. She made sure that everyone knew that the lamp had to stay on at night. People thought she had lost it, but pretty soon, others noticed that it needed water and watered it. People started to cheer that little leaf on to live. One morning, another little leaf had come up through the soil. A couple of days later, another leaf appeared. Eventually, that first leaf had become a whole and healthy plant again. If your real self is down to one leaf, then you need to pay attention to your inner life. You're not going to grow unless you do. It's vital that you set aside time to be alone and find the great one within you who made all things. Take quiet moments to ask for wisdom, for guidance from that still small voice within. And then one day as you do this, there's going to be a shoot, and then another shoot, and then a branch, until you're a healthy plant again, or perhaps for the first time in a very long while. How will you know that you're a child of God's wisdom? By your results. What Beverly Sills did with her plant, you can do with your own life. The results will be there for everyone to see. You'll be peaceful, gracious, full of an unrepentant optimism. And others will see it, and they'll begin to cheer you on. And then you'll understand the text with which we began. God's wisdom is proved right by all who are her children. Are you a child of God's wisdom? You can be.